and what feels bad and what hurts other people. And I think that the more that we tune into ourselves and connect to others, we're able to enlighten others. We're able to lift each other up, and we're able to go to the next dimension of consciousness.
What if one of the biggest secrets in music history has been hiding in plain sight all along? For years, B. Howard lived under a shadow he never asked for, a rumor that followed him from childhood into every stage of his adult life. Everything around him became fuel for a mystery he never publicly confronted. Until now. After decades of silence, he spoke, and what he said will cause you to begin to see this story differently. So, what is he finally saying? And does it bring us any closer to the truth? Join us as we unveiled how Michael Jackson's son finally breaks his silence. The rumor that would not die. The story of Brandon Howard, known simply as B. Howard, is perhaps one of the most complicated celebrity tales in modern times. Yet, this young man's journey began with neither fame nor controversy. He was just growing quietly in the shadow of an R&B world deeply intertwined with the Jackson family. Born on April 2, 1981, Brandon grew up between Los Angeles and Chicago, splitting his childhood between Cedars-Sinai Hospital birth records and Marva Collins Prep School discipline. Even then, he was a straight-A student, a disciplined child raised in a family that always pushed each generation to surpass the last. Literally, surrounded by music, it's no surprise that Brandon took a liking to the craft. Immediately, his teachers took notice of his booming talent. They slipped him into choirs and music classes where he spent hours practicing, sometimes even sneaking into rehearsals and imagining a life someday lived on stage. But by the time he reached his teenage years, something else began forming around him. Something he didn't understand, but would define the rest of his life. People began talking about a striking resemblance, his distinct voice, his tone of speaking, and even his mannerisms. Actually, even before Brandon ever stepped onto a major stage, the comparison was already there. He just didn't know it yet. And it grew louder every year. Brandon Howard and Michael Jackson bear an uncanny resemblance. In fact, aside from Michael Jackson himself, there's probably no one who looks more like him than B. Howard. When Brandon started doing interviews, the hosts would always ask him the same question. Sometimes, they blatantly asked if he was Michael's son. Other times, they treaded with more caution. Brandon tried to ignore it all and keep the focus on his own work. But the more he avoided the topic, the more people insisted there must be something he wasn't saying. And somehow, his silence became its own kind of answer. By the early 2000s, many online forums and tabloids were already convinced there was a hidden truth waiting to be exposed about this rising star. His mother, Miki Howard, a successful R&B singer, kept silent. But these only made matters worse. Even though she chose silence, fans connected the dots on their own. Miki was once managed by Joe Jackson, the same Joe Jackson who built the Jackson 5 empire. That's Michael's father, by the way. Miki also had been nicknamed Billy, the same name tied to Michael's 1982 hit song. Piecing together the timing, the relationships, and the resemblance, it all seemed too coincidental for the public to ignore. But there's something else. Beyond the whispers and speculation, however, B. Howard's connections to the Jackson family are real, adding even more layers to the mystery. He has been spotted with members of the Jackson family at various events, often welcomed warmly as if he were part of the inner circle. These public moments, coupled with undeniable similarities in performance style, have left fans questioning if the connection is more than just friendly. Brandon, however, stayed silent on the matter. At the time, he was only concerned about building a music career of his own, writing for major artists, sleeping on studio couches, and grinding through long nights simply to earn respect. He hoped the story would fade. But not only did it not fade, it followed him into every interview, every award show, and every stage he stepped onto. And then came the moment when everything became worse. The DNA result that exploded worldwide. Brandon Howard had managed to withstand the pressure for years, but in March 2014, it suddenly detonated. A live-streamed press conference orchestrated by Film on TV claimed to possess what the world had been waiting for: scientific proof that B. Howard was the biological son of the legend, Michael Jackson. A host walked on stage holding a single sheet of paper and announced a 99.9% probability that Brandon matched DNA allegedly taken from one of Michael's old orthodontic devices. In a matter of minutes, headlines burst across the internet claiming MJ's secret son had been confirmed. Some even called Brandon the heir to the throne, while others believed the DNA result proves what fans already knew. But there's a problem with this. Brandon himself was nowhere near that stage. He had never asked for the test, he never submitted his DNA, and absolutely didn't contact any media outlet. After this massive headline-worthy incident, when fans heard Brandon speak, he did it calmly as always, but underneath it, he appeared completely exhausted. A young artist who spent years building credibility suddenly had his identity taken hostage by tabloid machinery. It didn't take long before the cracks in the test began to show. Some internet users spotted that the logo on the so-called lab report matched a fictional DNA facility from the movie Terminator Salvation. Investigators tried to locate the Irish lab named on the form, but it didn't even exist. The whole thing turned out to be a hoax, layered on top of a rumor wrapped in the public's obsession with the private life of a man who had been dead for 5 years, and Brandon unwillingly had become the centerpiece of this manufactured scandal. One would think the paternity days would end there, but another twist emerged. Augie Johnson, the man who worked with Michael Jackson on Off the Wall, claimed he was Brandon's biological father. He even insisted that he had been present at Brandon's birth and had the paperwork to prove it. Nobody took him seriously, and the Brandon-Michael theory refused to die. People asked how Augie could possibly have a child that looked like he was a copy of Michael before the surgery. But if the DNA did match, some are arguing that perhaps it wasn't Michael's DNA at all. Perhaps it was Joe's. The Joe Jackson theory. Just when the world was beginning to recover from the shock of the fraudulent DNA test, another rumor immediately rose to take its place, not giving the public a chance to breathe. This new rumor was even more complicated and far more believable to those who followed the Jackson family closely. A source closely connected to the Jackson inner circle told the New York Daily News in an interview that he had been hearing for years that Brandon was Joe's son. The claim was just a single sentence, but it changed the entire direction of the story. Suddenly, the public was no longer looking at Michael Jackson. They were looking at his father. And what's worse? The timeline made people pay attention. They believed it was way too much to be a coincidence. In the early 80s, Mickey Howard, Brandon's mother, was making waves and gaining national recognition. Her professional management was done by Joe Jackson. She went on tours with him, performed alongside artists in the Jackson orbit, and was frequently seen with Joe during a time when he was known for maintaining numerous extramarital relationships. Then there's the fact that Mickey herself once admitted people called her Billie, a detail fans linked to Billie Jean, a song about a woman who insists the singer fathered her child. It seemed rather convenient, and conspiracy theorists treated it as confirmation rather than speculation. Brandon's birth year perfectly aligned with the peak of Mickey and Joe's professional relationship. The insiders in the music often whispered that the two had grown way too close. Some even suggested that the Jackson family's silence on the matter was intentional, a way to avoid another scandal in a household already drowning in controversies. Until his death in 2018, Joe Jackson never addressed the rumor publicly, so he neither confirmed nor denied, even though he was well aware of it. One can say his silence allowed the story to grow unchecked, and the comparisons didn't help matters, or maybe they did, for the theorists at least. They began putting photos of Joe Jackson in his prime and B. Howard as a young man side by side. The resemblance could not even be denied. The jawline, the eyes, the structure of his expression. One fan wrote online that Brandon doesn't look like Michael. He looks like Michael's father. What made the theory even stronger was that the discredited DNA test could have matched Joe's DNA instead of Michael's. After all, fathers and sons share nearly identical genetic markers. To those desperate for answers, it explained everything. But for B. Howard, these theories of whether he was Michael's son or brother were not compelling mysteries. They were heavy burdens on his young shoulders. The rumors are overshadowing his music, his career, and even his sense of self. Each time a new rumor spreads, it builds a wall around him, one that grows taller with every interview question, every online debate dissecting his face, his voice, even his mannerisms. And while the world argued about who fathered him, Brandon finally broke his silence. B. Howard finally speaks. After so many years of being followed by accusations and headlines he never asked for, B. Howard finally chose to speak. Unlike what many probably expected, he didn't come fuming with the DNA paperwork held up to a camera. Instead, his truth came through a series of calm, controlled interviews and messages. The anticipation preceding his reveal was, perhaps, one of the biggest in history. But what he shared cut in a completely different direction from the theories that had swirled around him for more than a decade. Brandon didn't validate the rumors. Now, anyone would feel privileged to be associated with the great Michael Jackson, but not Brandon. He didn't claim the legacy people kept trying to give him. What he gave was a deeply human explanation, one filled with admiration and the complicated pressure of being compared to someone who defined an entire era of music. B. Howard did not deny that he had been inspired by Michael Jackson for most of his life. He said he studied Michael's voice, his delivery, his stage presence, every detail that made him one of the most transformative performers in history. It's not like Brandon didn't understand why people noticed the similarities. He clearly understood why interviews always circled back to the same question. But he emphasized that he never claimed to be Michael Jackson's son, not even once. Those claims, he said, came from media narratives, public speculation, and voices outside of his control. According to him, he was well taken care of, and he makes his own cash, so he had no plans of suing the Jackson estate. He also opened up about the emotional weight the rumor carried. According to him, from a young age, he felt trapped between fascination and suspicion. He said that while fans compared him relentlessly and journalists prodded, even his colleagues in the industry were not left out. It became impossible for him to simply exist as an artist without the world dissecting his every movement as possible evidence of a hidden lineage. Far from being exciting to him, the whole thing was just exhausting. But even while debunking this, Brandon remained respectful. He didn't mock the theorists, nor did he lash out at those who insisted they saw Michael's features in his face. Instead, he asked to be recognized for the work he has done, the music he creates, and the legacy he is trying to build on his own terms. He was tired of being defined by a story that wasn't his to begin with. Despite finally addressing the rumors, B. Howard's response left the public with more questions than answers. Was this his way of gently acknowledging a hidden truth? Or was it a respectful attempt to lay the rumors to rest without disrupting his or the Jackson family's lives? Either way, his words only added fuel to the fire, inviting even more speculation and keeping the mystery alive. But the one person who could have answered everything finally stepped forward. Miki Howard breaks her silence. As the rumors reached their loudest point in 2014, Miki Howard, the woman at the center of every theory, spoke publicly. At the time, she was in her early 60s and had been humbled by decades in the music industry. She decided to protect her family from a narrative she allegedly never created. She didn't hold any press conference or anything of that sort. She just agreed to an interview with Essence. She told them that she was not Billie Jean, firmly rejecting the idea that she had ever been romantically involved with Michael Jackson. She insisted that the story was built on nothing more than coincidence and tabloid imagination. Miki also explained that she had no idea a DNA test was being presented to the world. She reportedly learned about it the same way everyone else did, by turning on the television. She said she had grown children. They lived their own lives, and she had no idea what the public was going on about. Behind her composed exterior, it was clear she felt blindsided and hurt. The rumor didn't just question her son's identity, it questioned hers too. Ironically, Miki had always been open about her past. She has spoken about her struggles with addiction, abusive relationships, and her fight to rebuild her life. Stories she later detailed in her 2016 biopic, Love Under New Management, The Miki Howard Story. When asked about Augie Jackson, the man who claimed to be Brandon's father, Miki said she couldn't make any statement regarding what he said. According to her, she had no idea what he was talking about. She also said it opens up cans of worms and memories and things that have no business being discussed in public. But she didn't explain what she meant by that. She was then asked if she had spoken to the Jackson family about the matter. She said she hadn't spoken to anybody and wasn't interested. Personally, she said she wouldn't have made a statement because she didn't care. She already knew what was happening. Some people said that Miki's initial silence may not just be personal but legal, due to alleged NDAs with the Jackson family. These agreements may prevent her from speaking about any personal or professional dealings that could confirm or deny the story. Her reluctance has only deepened the mystery, as fans interpret her silence as meaningful. If such agreements exist, fans believe they may be protecting a deeper truth. Despite the lack of evidence, public fascination continues to grow, and the narrative remains compelling. And to be frank, in the current age of the internet and celebrity gossip, none of those truths mattered if the gossip machine latched onto her. And latch onto her it did. Her professional relationship with Joe Jackson in the 80s was more than enough for fans to weave an entire narrative of their own. Even though she repeatedly dismisses it, it doesn't seem like she can ever escape it. Even as Miki tried to shift attention back to her music and her privacy, the public refused to let the story die. Some accused her of hiding the truth. Others believed she was protecting her from backlash. A few insisted she was covering for either Joe or Michael. No matter what she said, every sentence became fuel for a dozen new theories. It doesn't matter who she was covering for, but what is the alleged reincarnation of Michael Jackson doing now? Where B. Howard is now. There's no doubt that B. Howard has had a rather tumultuous career, but he hasn't let that define him, even for a moment. At present, Brandon is still focused on his move through the music industry, but on his own terms. He is not chasing the noise that once surrounded his name. Not that he ever did anyway. Instead, he has settled into a more controlled, independent lane. He is still building records behind the scenes, as much as in front of the microphone. His sound still carries the same blend he has always been known for, R&B at its core. Unlike the years when every appearance triggered speculation, he now appears only occasionally in the public eye. His interviews are selective, and his updates come in fragments rather than constant exposure. In recent years, he has also expanded his international presence through music-related appearances and industry collaborations. One of the most widely reported was his involvement in Russia's Intervision Song Contest, where he was announced as the United States representative for the competition. It was a moment that placed him on an international stage once again. In many ways, his present career shows a full circle. Still rooted in music, still influenced by Michael Jackson's sounds, but no longer bothered by the rumor that once followed him everywhere. In the end, even though B. Howard has finally spoken out, he's done so in a way that still leaves fans on the edge of their seats, wondering if this is truly the end of the story, or if there's more yet to be revealed. One thing's for sure, B. Howard's connection to Michael Jackson, whether real or rumored, will continue to fascinate fans for years to come. Is B. Howard really Michael Jackson's son? And why did Joe Jackson remain silent in the face of it all? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.